Okay, so hi, I'm Mike again. Just to give you a bit of history on this. When I started in youth ministry, games were a pretty big deal. So let me give you context. I am not anti-games. There will be moments where you think I am. I am not. Okay. Games are good and games are fun. In fact, I remember learning when I was at Heritage on the youth ministry course that technically youth ministry was actually about games for a very long time. At the beginning of youth ministry. So youth ministry started as a way of kind of giving people, young people in a very Christian context and culture, an alternative space to stay away from drugs and parties and rock and roll music and all that good stuff, right? And so technically games was always kind of this like weird centerpiece of youth ministry, but I think, and I'd like to put forward that moving into this kind of next generation as things have progressed, that games kind of became a wineskin that we got a little bit obsessed with, and that we now probably are in a position where we don't have to lean onto them as much. So just to caveat all of this, most of you know this, but there are primary theological issues. There's a guy named Gary Bershears. He kind of separates these as things to die on, so primary issues, things to die on. Secondary issues, which is things to divide over, so that's why we have denominations or fellowships like us. We have things that are tertiary theological issues, that are things that we debate over. I like the D's, I think it's really cool. And then the last one is philosophical issues, which is to discuss. And what I'm going to talk to you right now, I just want to be super clear. I might be passionate about it or excited about it or give you something that sounds like this is the only way to do youth ministry. Please don't hear that. This is a fourth order issue. This is a philosophical issue. If you do play lots of games in your youth group, God bless you. That's totally cool. I did not, and so what I want to put forward is kind of an alternative to that kind of classic youth ministry style game environment. Because I think sometimes we make this a little bit too complicated. So let me give you kind of my why behind why I think these things are super, more of a relationship-based ministry is advantageous now, just to kind of give you my thought process. In an era where everything was relational, you don't need to emphasize relationship, right? So in like the 1950s, 60s, until 1995 when the internet was created, social and interaction was incredibly important to a lot of people. And we've actually moved into a space and time where like Western individualism has been like hyper like focused and become this like rampant self-centered individualism to a point where people are feeling incredibly lonely. I was listening to a podcast the other day. It was neat because it was explaining how social media gives you this like feeling, that tired feeling of I've hung out with lots of people without any of the dopamine of actually hanging out with lots of people. So social media is actually like getting the worst of social interaction without giving you the best of social interaction, but it actually makes you feel like you're so exhausted you can't be doing things social. Now, once you actually step outside of that and you force yourself into those social and kind of incarnate settings, you'll actually see that people's mental health, everything just kind of shifts and goes up. And so the way I look at this generation and the way I looked at probably my generation and Gen Z, Gen Alpha, is that we are all very much so relational virgins. We are relationally inept. We don't really do that a whole lot. And most of us feel like relationships are just for these, quote, extroverts that we find some places. But actually, relationships are incredibly important for all of us. My biblical basis for this is throughout the entirety of Jesus' ministry, where he just did normal life with his disciples. But I love John 1:14. The word became flesh and dwelt among us. And so that's really the heart behind this kind of ministry philosophy. How can we become the hands and feet of Jesus and dwell amongst the students so that they see who Jesus is? So I'm going to put forward there's kind of three, and please cut me off, stop me anytime. There's three spaces that I thought through when I did youth ministry. Maybe I should give you some context. For some of you who might think that relationship-based ministries for small churches, I don't want this isn't a flex, this is just so you understand. I took over a youth ministry of about 10 to 15 kids, and we grew the ministry to 100 kids with 25 youth leaders, mostly unchurched kids. Relationship-based ministry doesn't mean you have to be 6 kids. If you're looking to like expand your youth ministry, grow it, invite friends to it. It doesn't have to be an insider small church model to be relational. I think sometimes we have a paradigm in our minds that that's the only way you can do relationship ministry. You have cool, hip, fun stuff, and everyone comes to it, or you have relationships and you have a small, conservative youth ministry. That's just not the case. So let me just start with kind of my ministry philosophy. So there's your space. There's your space. So if you think about your youth night, think about what you do. I remember the day that I got sick and tired of playing a new game. I always used to tell people at Bible college, they don't teach you how to play games, they teach you the Bible. And so when they sit you in front of a youth group and go, okay, go do an activity, you're like, what? Where did I get trained for this? Because I did not get trained for this. And so I decided to sit my leaders down. I had like 10 leaders or so. And I said, I'm not going to play games anymore. You're going to be the games. You're going to be the games. But let's do this intentionally. And so I said, each of you is going to get a gender and a grade. And this was during the time when that wasn't a popular thing to do. Each of you is going to get a gender and a grade. And whatever gender and grade that is, your job is not just to become friendly with students, but it's actually to become their friends. Your job is to integrate into their lives and get to know all of the things that you truly and honestly as a grown-up probably don't care about. Back then it was like Fortnite and Halo. You know what I mean? And so instead of me running a game, which the whole point of the game was to create community, was to bring people over, which I felt was kind of waning in its ability to do that, I said, hey, look, you're going to figure out what your group likes. And in that, you are now responsible for this 45 minutes to an hour, the front end of youth group, whatever that looks like, and you are going to be their friend. You are going to join their friend group. I actually, if I'm going to be truly honest and confess this, this idea that I feel like the Lord gave me just reminded me of my high school years at parties. And I always found, you take away alcohol, what is a party? A party is just a group of people hanging out for a very long period of time in one space. And they have alcohol as social lubricant, and I think that we have the Holy Spirit as social lubricant. I think it's a whole lot better. And so basically I told my leaders, you guys are going to be in charge of your individual groups. When they come in, whatever you want to do, be creative. Because I found that there was a lot of emphasis put on me as the youth pastor to come up with a cool new game. And instead I just said, you know your group better than I do. So instead of forcing 40 kids to play dodgeball, which we didn't have a gym, so that didn't work, you need to actually show up and know what your group wants. So I had this youth leader named Jane. She was phenomenal, but she realized that her girls like to bake. And so she would just take these, they'd show up to youth, she'd take these 4 girls downstairs, and they would just go bake in the kitchen. I had this youth leader named Denver. He was an absolute weapon, an insane human being, and I'm pretty sure that they spent most of their time either beating each other up or beating themselves up. I'm not sure what they did, and I didn't want to know. But what I did want to know is that Denver was the one who had a relationship with them and was building that at the front end. See, I think sometimes we can get in the way of our own youth leaders becoming the saints that we are supposed to equip to do the work. Right? As pastors, we're supposed to give them the opportunities to do the work. Now, it is fun to do the work. It's love. It's fun like mobbing out with the boys and having a good time. But it's important that our leaders get to experience that joy as well. So I just told them that. Now, here's the key in how this works. The youth pastors in the room, the youth directors in the room, the main leader. My job became far less fun and far more uncomfortable. So my job now was now to find all the people who were on the fringes. My job now is to find all the kids who didn't feel like they fit in and belong. And it's one of 2 options. One, you got to try to find a group for them to go and integrate into. And so I'd be like, oh, there's Jimmy. And Jimmy just showed up to youth group for the first time. He didn't know what was going on. He just showed up. My job, the youth leaders are not there to engage with this young person. That's my job. I'm going to take this person. Hey, Jimmy, how old are you? Oh, you're in grade 6? I love that. You're grade 6 boy. Love that too. Okay, great. I'm going to bring you over here to John. This is John's small group. And now John isn't going to go, these are my youth kids. Who is this kid? As a leader, his job is to actually grab that student, bring them into it, and make sure that they are facilitating the conversation so that they're involved. To me, it's like Christ-like radical hospitality. And so I was clearly explaining to my leaders, it's important for you guys to be hospitable. This is your space now. They're not coming to my youth group. They're coming to your youth group, to our youth group. And so I would be the float. Everybody else would kind of have their group, and then we'd integrate those. One of the key things I do want to point out in this model, I didn't get worried about size, and I didn't get legalistic about gender and age difference. And so if you had a kid who came with a friend who was a year younger than them, let them go in their group. If you had a kid who is a year older than them, just let them follow their group and become part of that social clique. If you have a leader who's actually better one-on-one, because to be honest, some of our leaders shouldn't be in charge of like 15 kids or like 10 kids or even 5 kids because they don't have the social capacity to do it because they are that more introverted leader. than just say, hey, we got this really difficult kid over here who shows up every week. He sits in the corner and nobody cares about him. But he's a human being made in God's image. And I think it's powerful when you say this leader is not a wasted resource when he spends one-on-one time with that kid. And there are leaders who actually function better in that capacity. When we force a leader to be the cool extrovert leader, I think we actually diminish it. And so what tended to happen was I would have this large group. We had this massive class of grade 12 boys that all came out to our youth group. And there was probably 20 to 30 of just grade 12 boys. But then I had 3 insane extrovert leaders who were part of that posse. And it was cool to watch them divide and conquer this massive group. Whereas over here, I'd have 3 nerdy kids who just wanted to play video games. And we had 1 leader who just wanted to sit with them and love on them. Again, this is just the first hour of youth group. It's a little more complicated. It's a little less, we're going to do one thing. But it really puts the energy and effort onto your leaders actually taking the discipleship into their own hands. One of the biggest benefits to this, I don't know how your liturgy works for your youth ministry, but we would do games, then we'd come together and we would do worship in the Word, and then we'd go into small groups. I find if you can build relationships for the first hour of youth group, and you do that repeatedly, then small groups I found got longer and longer and longer and longer and longer and longer. Because you're earning the right to speak into their lives at the front end of youth group, so that at the back end of youth group, when you get into small group, you've done the hot, we're fun, it's fun, we're boys, we're doing all this stuff, and then you move into the space where they actually get to engage with the more serious stuff. You've earned that right. A second thing I did for this that helped kind of build this relationship-based model is I didn't give small group questions. A lot of my youth pastor friends thought this was a really big trick I played on my leaders, but it actually has an intentional purpose. When I gave out questions to small group leaders, what I found was, my no offense to your youth leaders, mine didn't listen during the sermon. They were like, I got the piece of paper, I'll just ask the questions. And then usually the questions are asked like this. When Jesus died, what did you think about that, guys? And so they stopped, right? They stopped critically thinking. They read half the question and they made up the second half. And often what would happen is it wasn't producing much fruit. And so I just said to my leaders, hey, look, I don't need you to listen to me, but I've brought something that I'm trying to share to them. And if you're not interacting with it, it's really going to be useless for them. So I need you guys to be paying attention to what's being said, so that you can ask thoughtful questions. And when somebody can actually take what's being said, integrate it into asking thoughtful questions, and then lead a group in that, I find that's been where we've seen our most fruit. The second thing in this is when it's a small group, I don't know if you've experienced this, but OG small groups, everyone gets there and they're silent because they're like, oh, I don't want to talk about this. One of the things I used to say is, hey, here's some questions that I had, or we would interact. But I said, if you have any question whatsoever, and I would let the rabbit trails fly. And you go from everywhere to were there dinosaurs in the Bible to can I smoke weed and still believe in Jesus? The whole, you run the gambit of all those questions. But if you are, it'll do 2 things. One, if you're in you're a Bible college student, you're a youth pastor, you're a youth director, sometimes those questions are the funnest to actually answer, especially when they're trying to be sarcastic and you just answer it. The second thing is it'll actually make your youth leaders have to figure these things out. Because often, even if it's sarcastic, it's usually the question that they're trying to ask. And so, personally, I feel like we've coddled youth leaders too much. If you're not picking up on that, I think we've made it so easy to be a youth leader that they don't actually have to care about the students anymore. Again, I said at the beginning, I'm going to get passionate about this. It's just a philosophy. But I wanted to make sure that my youth leaders got to experience actually discipling the students. I got to baptize one of my old students on Sunday when I came back to my old church for a service, and gosh, was his journey up and down. But then I got to weep in the tank while I baptized this kid, and I want youth leaders to be able to experience that. And that doesn't happen when you're just facilitating games and then reading questions off of a piece of paper. I haven't found that to be the case. Now, you'll have dynamic leaders who are doing the things that I'm saying without you intentionally telling them to do that, but I would really stress to do that. That's our space. That's the space that we have control over. And a side note on that, invite them to church on Sunday morning. my context is mostly on church kids. If you have on church kids that come and they feel comfortable in your building on a Tuesday night, I can almost guarantee you they'll feel comfortable on a Sunday morning. Sometimes they'll think they actually own the space, and the old people that are there are like, what are you doing? This is my church. But it's really cool. The second thing is the second space. That's their space. And so what I used to coach basketball. My caveat is it's good. If you can go in as the Christian guy, that's awesome. That's an avenue in which you can get into the school, whether you're the pastor or whatever. But if you have a skill or a thing that you have that can serve and bless that school, or you have an avenue in which you can get into the school and not be the Jesus guy, you'd be surprised how advantageous that is. Again, don't be afraid of your faith. Don't hide your faith. I'm not saying, pretend you're not the Christian guy. But if you can come in with a posture like Jesus and just say, hey, I'm here to serve, most schools are really open to that. Most people don't know this, but about a decade ago, they changed the language of co-curricular activities to extracurricular activities, and that's why when the teachers bargain for more money, they usually take away the extracurricular activities. The school system used to see these after-school activities as a part of what they did, and now most teachers don't serve in that capacity anymore with coaching and with extra help. They're usually gone. The parking lot when I used to go in to coach was pretty empty at 2:45, and so that's an opportunity for us as youth pastors, youth workers, and I would actually argue as youth leaders. When our youth ministry was the largest, I had 3 other youth leaders coaching at the same school that I coached at. We had somebody in almost every athletics department coaching, and it was definitely represented at our youth group, which was really, really fun. The best thing that I used to do, I learned by accident, was I'd go early, and at the end of the school day, while I'm walking in to coach, you see your students' friends, and the people you coach. And as you kind of walk through the halls and you say hey to people, this was always happening. Oh, hey, how's it going, Susie? How do you know that guy? Who is that guy? Why is there a weird guy that's mid-20s at our school? And he's like, and then they'd be like, oh, that guy, that guy's the youth pastor at the church down there. Oh, it's cool. Oh, that's a youth leader at the church down there. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, but what's he doing here? Oh, he's also the basketball coach. There's this bridge that happens with students and friends that makes it really easy for their friends to come out to youth group when they go, oh, this person's not some weird button-down religious guy. He's somebody who's coming and willing to serve in what we're doing here at the school. So I think being involved in their space is a really, really cool thing to do. The thing that it does for our church kids, especially, I coached at the school where all of my students, the majority of my students that went through public education went to. It also, I think, helps them to feel bold. Hey, my youth pastor's here, and he's normal, and that's really cool. And it's great. And again, if you're doing that in a Christian environment as well, from a Christian perspective, you're leading the Christian group or whatever, just being and present at the school is massive. I think it really helps them feel emboldened in their faith, they're not alone, because sometimes they can think we're too scared to go onto that turf. So that's their space. The third one is this neutral ground space. I actually found out after I started doing this that other people have coined something like this, but I think this is really valuable. After a youth night would take place, I would say, hey, I'm going to go to McDonald's. This is not an official part of the youth group. I'm just going to McDonald's. I think my youth group that I left now goes to Chick-fil-A because they're spiritual. But I said, hey, let's go to McDonald's. And I'm not in charge of who's getting there and how they're getting there. Moms and dads, our program is done, so this isn't part of the program, and I make sure it's very, very clear. But me and my youth leaders all happened to end up at McDonald's, and we probably have some of our best discipleship moments at McDonald's. Now, McDonald's ended up hating us because when 80 kids descend upon McDonald's in one night, they get pretty upset about that. The people that make money love it, but the managers and stuff, they don't love that. But we would take over a whole section at McDonald's, and we would just talk. And it wouldn't just be the religious talk or whatever, but it would always turn. And it was funny. Somebody would tap me on the shoulder, be like, hey, can we go talk? And we'd go sit over in a booth over there. I don't know, a weird office, set up office. And then they'd be like, hey, and then just pour their life out. And tons of my leaders had that. And so I find if you do a relationship-based ministry, if that's really what your heart and focus is, I think that is, those are the three spaces you have to think through. Another place that can be a third space if you have the time and flexibility. I know a lot of my youth leaders were like shift workers, so like 4 days on, 4 days off, which is really cool because teenagers at every school always have a closest Tim Hortons that they go to. And so it is follow your church safety policy, which I think it should line up with it. But if you go a little bit earlier than the lunch rush, and you buy 12 pack of donuts, and please get your youth pastor to pay for it or your church to pay for it, and you sit there and you save a set of seats for your students, they will show up. And that could be an incredible third space for you to just go hang out and be a part of their lives. And it's a great way for people who do that shift work, who have like a Monday off or a Friday off or a Thursday off, to actually start building and integrating that relationship to be able to share the gospel. Just to kind of end this, what I find is love does cover a multitude of sins. People that come to your youth ministry and feel entertained won't always be okay when you say hard things, but people who feel loved will be really okay with you saying hard things, like very okay with it. And so I'm a pretty traditional Orthodox guy. I'm not fancy. I don't think you should do much other than just preach the word of God. I didn't do topical sermons. I didn't play games. But I think people gained a respect for what I had to say, or gained respect for what my leaders had to say, because we just love them really, really well. And so it's easy. It can be easy to worship the wineskin and not the wine, but the whole point of this philosophy of ministry is that we have those opportunities to say the difficult thing, to say, hey, we're not pro-LGBTQ+, but we love you, and we're going to be able to explain that with nuance. And you're going to want to hear that with nuance, because, I remember this one time, early in the relationship, I had a student come tell me, like, do you hate gay people? And I went, no. Like, okay, cool. And we got to know each other, we connected, and then later we were talking about how, like, hey, I don't think it's God's intended design to be in a same-sex marriage and all that stuff. He goes, whoa, you said you didn't hate gay people. And I said, I don't hate gay people. That's true, I don't hate gay people, but I also think this is the right way to do it. But because we had that time to build that relationship, he not only wasn't turned off, he kept going for the next 2 years and was totally open to hearing what we had to say about Jesus. He always said that, like, I'll become a Christian eventually, just not right now. That was his one line. He said, it all makes sense and it sounds great, but like, just not right now. I'm like, that's honest. I appreciate that. I think sometimes we overcomplicate the game side. And what I'm hoping that you hear in all this is you're just freed up to not be an event planner. Because I promise you, none of us who went to Bible college to be event planners. I can guarantee you. And if you can really harness the equipping the saints to do the work of the ministry, and you can utilize these three spaces, you'll find yourself with more time to get into the Word with effectiveness, because they actually feel loved and a part of it. I don't know, man. That's all I got. But are there any questions? Yeah, Isaiah.
Cliques happen all the time.
Let's go.
People get their groups, and that's like their crew.
Yeah.
I'm curious, based on your experience, do you roll with that and like that's their small group, or do you separate them and then force them into the uncomfortable?
See, this is the one thing I wasn't sure about in this philosophy, because I was like, okay, we're actually almost like encouraging cliques to happen. And I think it comes down to your understanding and philosophy of ministry. And I think some people's, like a lot of us, whether we know it or not, whatever youth group we grew up in, I grew up in a small, non-existent one that I barely went to, so I don't have a lot of this baggage. But a lot of people had like an experience in youth ministry where like they felt like everybody was best friends. And it's like this, when they explain to you, it's this utopia that they came from. And I'm like, I can almost guarantee you, as somebody who felt on the outside of their own youth group, that you weren't all best friends. A group of you were friends. There was usually one clique in youth group, and then there was this kind of hanging around thing that happens. And I think that's pretty common in our old school youth ministry models. What I found with this is it allowed us to not have to make everybody best friends, because the emphasis wasn't on actually peer-to-peer Christian friendship. This is where I'm going to get controversial, and you might not like me after. I don't really care if they come out with Christian friends. I do care if they come out not discipled. I want them to have a discipler this way. This way is great, but my end goal is this. And so I'm okay if there's a clique. If by clique you mean that like grade 12 boys all hang out together, that's okay with me. I'm also okay with being nuanced and going, look, there's 2 types of grade 12 boys, and we're going to make 2 groups as long as we have leadership that's actually building the relationship to disciple those 2 groups. And here's what I found, and maybe I'm making mine into a bit of a utopia, but what I loved was there was this kid named Angel, came from the wrong side of the tracks, no dad. We used to have to drive him to youth every week. He was in my nerd group, and he would play video games. And then there was, y'all know Nate Tucker. Some of you know Nate. So Nate was in my youth group. And Nate was captain of the basketball team, captain of the football team, and Angel and Nate would like hug each other as they came in. And like they were totally different social groups. So I don't know why it worked, but maybe because we weren't so hyper frustrated when there was a group of guys or a group of girls that had a good time. Because often I think that they're more frustrated with the fact that they don't have that leader and less they don't have that group. Do you know what I mean? Like, find a leader that makes the boys group, why would I want to go over there? I've got my girls. Like, we're going to go bake. We're going to go sit and make bracelets. We're going to, like, hang out and just talk. The biggest win I ever had was when I had a teenage girl walk past me and go, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to my leader. And she, like, walked past me. I'm like, that's perfect. That's what I want, right? Like, I think sometimes our old school way was, like, the youth pastor was cool and everybody was his, like, the clique was his. And it's like, what if everybody was the youth pastor of their group? Do you know what I mean? Or the youth leader of their group. And that was the person they were hoping. That's their Paul. Because you guys know as your youth group grows, you cannot be everybody's Paul, right? You guys got to find other, you got to replicate yourself to be able to do that. So I didn't find cliques to be that much of an issue. I actually felt it was better. Ooh, yes.
So in the beginning of the workshop, you talked about 3 Ds. Debate, discuss, and I missed one.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, it's actually die. So die for. Die for, divide over, debate over, discuss over, discuss. It's a Gary Breshears thing. It's super helpful because I think some people don't understand that there are different levels of theological disputes. And what I'm talking about now is a philosophy of ministry. So nobody should feel shamed for not doing this the way I do it. This is my opinion that me and God have worked out for my context, and I'm just sharing it with you. So that was the whole point of doing that. So if you do every week and you're going to still do games because, man, God has given you that like gift and ability to like have the dopest games and have fun, as long as the end goal of that is you're building a relationship to share the gospel or disciple, then have at her. John, yeah.
Leaders facilitating small groups is, I think, an amazing place to get to. When you have leaders who have a variety of different skill sets, but you see a potential for a specific leader to be able to facilitate a small group on their own, how do you get them to that point? And how do you build that kind of competency in them? And maybe this is also a leadership development question for leaders, but how do you create a sustainable structure of leadership development for your leaders? Because sometimes they can take on the responsibility of fulfilling the calling that you've given them as a youth leader, but feel underqualified to do it. Do you have a sustainable way of building into your leaders, whether it's for small group facilitation or just in general?
Yes and no. My answers are always going to come down to relationships. So when my leadership team grew with the youth ministry, I stopped hanging out with teenagers and I started hanging out with youth leaders. And so my discipleship in its multiplication became putting my effort and focus there. If you don't come to the summit, the Feb Youth Summit, Jeremy, who used to run the Feb Youth Summit before I did, used to joke that he would pull up. He would look out the window as he was leading a session, and he'd see me and my youth group playing frisbee in the parking lot. So those weekends aren't just about getting content. Those weekends are about building into your leaders relationally, and then also with the content that's there as well. And so Jesus hung out with 12 dudes, and it changed the world. I think we need to take that model a little more seriously, because he had the 70, he had the 10,000. Or the 5,000 or whatever. And so if we could just focus in on the small to work through multiplication. Do I have a system to that? And I haven't found one, because every leader I sit down with is super different. And so as I get to know them and as I do know the Word of God, how do I try to help them see the students like Jesus? So, plus I do find, become friends with your youth leaders if you're not. It is it is so natural when you take time to take them out. So the way I used to do it was after junior high, I would take them, my leaders, out to like Chuck's or something, get some half-price appies, and like we would just hang out. And the conversation would always start to move into a weird discipleship place where people would like one-up each other with the cool things that happen, and they just started to tell stories. So I do think that like a relationship-based youth ministry isn't just for the students. I think it needs to bleed because that kind of community is infectious, and it does push. It pushes people forward. So no, I don't have a plan, but I just like people.
I have a question. Did you have multi-generational leaders as part of your team?
I did. I was very fortunate too. Now, I'm going to say that when I had 25 youth leaders, I would argue 19 of them were probably young adult age, which isn't a bad thing. I don't know. I was told, hey, do you want to take over the young adults at your church? And I said, no, I think there shouldn't be young adults. They should just come be youth leaders and get plugged in and serve in the church, which actually worked. And I think the young adults coming and doing that was phenomenal. They have the energy, which is great, but I was blessed to have a few lifers who'd been in it for a long time, who kind of bring that kind of steady wisdom. And then I got old, so, I mean, then I was the old guy in the room, so.
How do you find this philosophy of playing on your role now as next-gen catalyst?
I mean, not to spill the beans, but this is what I do with y'all. If you guys are a youth pastor in Feb, I just take you guys out for coffee and hang out with you guys. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I think when I read Jesus that we've overcomplicated it. So now I was just like, what if we just like had a deep relationship with the Lord and then just loved people really well, and that meant being around people. I've been able to transfer that kind of relational model. Some of you guys weren't. James North wasn't at snow camp, so I was like, I'm going to get together with Derek, and we're just going to see why we're not, and let's pitch why like doing this together is better than doing it alone. And now Derek's one of my like best homies, so I love it. So I just love that stuff, you know. Mm-hmm.
Well, I was curious about your use of space when you were running different groups, and
Yeah.
different ages and different activities.
Yeah.
Purely from a practical standpoint.
Let's
how
go.
What did that look like?
Oh, that's sweet, man. So we had a really crappy small country church building with 4 like decrepit portables. And I remember like I first came to the church, my dad's like, "Bro, are you gonna be able to work here?" And I'm like, "I don't know." I tell my buddies stories, and then they see Willow, and they're like, "Okay." I would say look at your space and see what you can do with it. So we had these 4 gross, ugly portables, and we utilized that. You know what nobody cares about when you have 4 gross, ugly portables? How they look. It's amazing. And so there were these things that I complained about until it turned out that with these 2 of them were divided in half. And so we could actually like have groups that took over certain parts of the portable, and it became like their hangout. It was their space at the church that nobody else got to touch. Now, I can't prescribe that to you because you don't have falling down gross portables. We did. So we like let them spray paint, let them do what they need, like let them just come hang out. We, if they found a roadside couch that we would look for bed bugs or whatever on and make sure it didn't happen, like we'd let them come bring it in, but we let them personalize that space because of what I saw as a deficiency. And so I would just say like space matters. I don't want to say it doesn't matter. So take stock in your space. What do you have? What do you don't have? And then bring in some creative thought. But always, one of the things I did in the 3 youth ministries that I've run was like focusing in on why are we doing this. And no matter what, every youth group I'm in, there's always some manly dude that's like, we should do paintball. And I'm like, why? Explain to me why. Like, because it's cool to shoot kids. And I'm like, that's not a great why. So it's like, what if we just thought to ourselves, this is the resource that God has given us. So he's a God that wants to give us the resources, and he's giving us the resources. How can we focus this towards building relationship to build discipleship? How can we do that? So if you're the youth guy or you're a youth leader, like just be critical about what your space is. Be like, I don't know, I got this, and that. See how God can use it. Because I think he can. I think we have a model in our heads about what it should look like, and we don't look in front of us what God has just given us. So those portables, I think they're going to do a building reno soon, hopefully at Willow, because they need it, because those things are dangerous. But I remember telling the group that, like in my last year there, I'm like, guys, we're going to tear these down and build a gym. They're like, you better not. I'm going to take that wall home with me. And I'm like, all right, you can't. It's got asbestos in it, man. You can't do that. I don't know. They owned it, this gross, ugly, portable space. Yeah.
You mentioned hospitality and as talk about kind of our space as church, and their space as the school, neutral space. In terms of the youth ministry team's homes as part of that our space for ministry, what that looks like.
Homes are great. Always check your safe church stuff. Like I'm always super careful about like driving and homes and stuff. And so this is something you'll definitely have to take up with your churches and your elders and different things. But like so your safe church policy is basically saying this is what we're going to cover you for, but it's not telling you that you can't do it. It's saying that if something happens where you are in a car with students and you don't have that like other police checked grown up with you, no one's covering your butt. Like you're sued or whatever. So you're really taking risks. And so I would say like especially for your church kids who you know their families and you can do that, like whatever liberties mom and dad will let you have to build that relationship. I would say like be wise about it, but I think there's some really cool space in there that you can be hospitable. We had students over all the time, but it was mostly students who we knew their families well, so as not to cause any sort of issue or discrepancy. So you just got to be you're always fighting internally with that safe church policy. Does that make sense? So homes is great, dude. Going out for coffees and I love that. Just, make sure your elders and staff and your safe church person knows. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So I was just wondering, you said about like, see, your church when you first got there, they were big into games and stuff, and then you transitioned into no games.
Yeah.
How did the youth take it? How did that look?
Yeah, so I'm bad at that. I'm not subtle. I don't know if anybody's picked up on that. And so I would say my biggest faux pas in youth ministry is I'm like, this is dumb. Why are we doing it this way? And I like kick things down. I'm not doing that anymore. I've learned my lesson in my new job. I'm doing less of that, much less of that. But I totally messed that one up. Like I walked in and I was like, come on. I was like hurt, cocky, and arrogant back then. And I was that. So I didn't handle that well. There's so many things I look back and I go, oh man, if I just let that thing ride a little longer. And my boss sat me down like 2-3 months in. He goes, stop changing everything right away. And I'm like, okay, cool, my bad. But I would try to make up for it and like going out for coffee and being like, or like, McDonald's, hey man, I'm sorry. Like I came in and did that too quick. So I don't have good wisdom. There's lots of mistakes there. But it lasted 9 years. It all shifted, so.
So did the kids miss the games?
Not once. It took a while to transition it. Like it took a while for them to be okay with it, and it took a while for the leaders. If I were to do it again, what I would do is I would start with the leaders first and really get them like really pumped for this idea of like, hey, we're moving this and do it slowly. But no, like the relationship that the students built with the leaders, they wouldn't trade for any weekly game. Like me and my buddy John, we still joke because we still get calls from like guys in their like mid-20s who like something happens, they'll just be like, oh, I just want to talk to Cogs from the good old youth days back in the day. Oh, it's so great. I know that stuff happened in the past, but it doesn't just happen to me. It happens to my youth leaders too. And I just love that. And that is built on like the deep relationships. Whereas kids can come in and out of your program and just play games. I don't know. I'm preaching at it now, but yeah, no, it's a bit of a transition, but maybe do it every other week or try a week without it or whatever. But I think kids just want to be loved. Like they miss human relationship more than they'll let on, even if they sit there and scroll the whole time they're with you. They're looking for you. Here's what I used to do with my youth leaders. Here's the wins. Kids talking to you like this. Yeah. He does that. That's your first win. Okay. And he's talking to you and he's doing this, and then he flips it over. That's your second win. That's great. And your third one is this. Boom. That's your job. You can get a kid to do that, you're building a relationship with them. That's what I'm looking for. So that's like if you can get your leaders to do that, man, that's gold. Because then the kid forgets their phone's there, and then their mom's like freaking out because they didn't answer, and they're used to always having access to their child. So, yeah.
You started to answer my next question. So, at our church, we're at Calvary Baptist Church in Oshawa.
Oh, amazing.
It's a mission ministry. So,
Cool.
We're starting youth from scratch.
Let's go.
And pre-COVID, we were in it already. It was super easy. But I feel like post-COVID things have changed a little bit.
Yeah.
So how do we start from scratch?
Oh, I love that question. See, what I love about this is that, like, for the guys people who have established ministries in here, like, it's hard to switch this up. But when you have nothing else, relationship-based ministry is the easiest thing to start up because, again, I'm a big believer that God gives you everything you need. I know that we all say that, but then we want this thing and we want that thing. If in front of you, you have yourself as a leader, and then you have 4 students, start there and just build relationships with them. That is the best formula. And as it grows, bring another leader in and say, hey, I need, maybe you need a guy. Hey, I need a boy to come talk to the boys. Don't overcomplicate it. And so take time to hang out. The best times around my youth group was small. The things you can do when you have 10 to 15 kids, or you have whatever, we have a small group of people, it's so much fun. Once you grow, you have to multiply and work with leaders, and there's so much more stress to it. But man, those early years, if you can build strong relationships and then open the Word of God, and be creative. I think we've lost our ability to be creative in youth ministry because we think it's games, music, speaking, music, small group, go home, I'm done my job for the week. I think we've got that in our brains. Yeah. Youth ministry is made up. Do we all know this? We're all I don't believe Jesus was the first youth pastor. I know some people do. I love that for them. But it's made up. So have fun. You've got the Word of God to give you some great guidelines. You've got the Holy Spirit, which Tim killed it this morning. You have the Holy Spirit to guide you towards these things. And the Holy Spirit is often really great at contextualizing. So just pray and love God and love people. So I think just take the pressure off to be we got to do this cool game. Especially when Calvary Oshawa is another animal unto itself. I love Dan. Dan's my homie. But bro, those guys program. I couldn't work at Calvary Oshawa. I couldn't work at Calvary Oshawa. I couldn't do it, bro. I couldn't. They're legit, man. They run like a machine. But that's a different set of gifts and a different philosophy of ministry, which I have a deep respect for Dan and Calvary. Yeah.
I work at a church where 50% of my youth don't attend the church.
Mm-hmm.
They're all there's 7 Catholic high schools within 15 kilometers of my school,
Nice.
or of my church, and so all of these kids are bringing 4 friends with them who are part of different schools. How do you see integrating unchurched kids who also don't attend on Sundays
Let's
and
go.
don't plan to unless their friends are coming? How do you integrate that?
Well, okay. How do I integrate that? Meaning on a Sunday morning?
Or just into the group in general, if you're trying to build relationships with all these kids.
Right. So the youth leader's job, I don't know if I probably didn't make this super clear, but the youth leader's job is to be selfless like Christ. I had kind of 2 camps in my youth ministry leadership team. Ones who actually got into the things that their kids got into. So grown men started to play Halo. Not that that's uncommon, but that would happen. But you'd also have people who, as my good friend John says, who just fake it. Who faked to care about it. And I'm either of those things is a sacrifice on your time and resources. And so I think what you do as that host of that group, it's your job is to make them feel comfortable and a part of it. And so some of that is doing a good job listening, asking questions, just being aware when the group looks cliquey, your own group. So as that friend's getting hedged out, and my job as the youth pastor was to walk around and I'd be hey man, this Jimmy's just not in the group. And they'd go, thanks Mike. So I wasn't just watching for kids. I would actually intentionally be giving my leaders a check. Sometimes I'd text them and be stop talking to each other and go talk to the kids. Stop it. But I would that model this is where it puts pressure on me. If my leaders aren't being relational, my model does not work. It does not work. So it isn't it's fun, they're all playing games and the 5 leaders are talking over there. If my leaders aren't in it, it fails. So it definitely puts an onus on me to make sure that they're integrated, to get them integrated. Now on unchurched kids, this is a thing you won't hear from anywhere else because I haven't heard anybody else say it, but this is what my experience was. When unchurched kids feel loved, they ask better questions than church kids. Way better questions. You want unchurched kids in your youth group because they will push your church kids so much. Your kids will ask weird questions like, how many wise men were there really? Which doesn't change your life at all. But honestly though, unchurched kids ask that question that your church kid is dying to ask, but they know that they're either going to be outed as a sinner or an idiot, and they don't want to do either of those things, right? So man, unchurched kids in your youth group are the best. Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
You mentioned in terms of this, the value older volunteers beyond young adults, especially in a relationship ministry. But again, it's one of those things that they don't teach you how to do in Bible college for youth ministry. So in terms of your experience in some of the teams where you have had older volunteers, or just in your role now in talking with youth pastors who have those types of volunteers on your teams, are there any kind of common denominators you would point to towards to say, okay, if you're trying to kind of convince, or you're trying to get a team that's more multi-generational on your team, what's the common denominators or kind of tactics, or even just general church culture that tends to lend towards that?
Yeah, like you could fight some of that. I actually find my older leaders, because they grew up before social media, are actually they don't know the gold they have. And that's part of what you have to mine, is they understand that young people don't have relationships. They don't understand how unhealthy that makes them. And so they don't realize that they're better at making relationships than these kids are. And they don't realize, because it was a given. Like for some of you in this room who are older, it was a given that you had relationship in your teenage years. It was like hyper relationship. And now it's not a given anymore. And so I think to just remind them, hey, that thing that you're frustrated with, you actually are really good at it, and you need to have patience with them, but ultimately you're trying to bring back this relational space that you just inhabited naturally. So I would definitely pull them on that. And for some of them, so again, it's always contextual, but I knew some people, again, the whole our youth group was all best friends and nobody hated each other, and there was 20 of us and we did everything together, and I said, that's cool. Do that for your group. You saw that, you know it works, and you want to do it on this scale, and I'm just telling you, do it on this scale. Come in and do that with these girls. Don't make it overcomplicated. And they go, oh, okay. So I try to understand where their context is and bring them to a space of realizing they probably got more to offer than they think. But it is hard. It feels nowadays like navigating younger generations to older generations. It just feels like you're going on a mission field to Africa. It's a totally different world most days. Is that helpful? I don't know. No? Cool, no. Nate says no. Cool.
More, we're talking about, we know that these older volunteers, in terms of their history and their skills with that, will be beneficial to a relationship-based ministry. So as youth pastors, you're trying to get those type of volunteers onto your teams. You're looking at the church and saying, okay, how do I get some of the people in my church who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s?
Oh, you're talking about how convince them to be there.
How can I convince them
Oh.
youth ministry might be
Oh, sorry. Call it discipleship. I think youth ministry has freaked so many people out. They I have to be cool. I have to be this. I have to be that. Be an advocate for nobody cares how cool you are, because nobody does. Truly, you need to just let them know, this is I think relationship-based ministry throws you into a place where it's your job is to disciple 6 boys. We've overcomplicated to this whole thing, and sometimes when you bring, I would trick people into coming into youth ministry by being hey, we really need help with this great group of grade 6 boys, and they would be okay, fine, I'll come in and sacrifice for you, and I'm hey, but you need to love them, you need to care for them, you do all these things, okay, I can do that, and then they go, I love these kids, this is awesome, and so we don't say come help in the youth ministry, say hey, we're looking for people to disciple these young people. And then give them context for what that looks like. You're going to build a relationship with them. You're going to have to care about this thing called Halo. In Fortnite, they're going to do this dance, and you're going to be what is that? It's just but remember, Jesus puts up with all your crazy crap. So just or stuff. Sorry, and so be selfless like Christ towards them and all that they do. But underneath that, you will the whole heart of this is discipleship. Grown-ups love discipleship, right? Am I wrong? No? Yeah, I think. Right? Yeah.
For a person who believes in this model, but their youth group hasn't implemented it yet, how would you advise somebody navigating that?
So, dude, jump in and do it. So I interned at a church that I won't name, and I was told youth ministry is about ordering bouncy castles and making flyers. I left that church promptly after that. But while I was there, I remember I decided to become a small group leader, and I was told, why are you being a small group leader? That's not what youth pastors do. You're kind of up here, and that's down here. But I believe that was the model, so I decided within the model that I'd been given, the only space that I could actually disciple young people is actually doing it. So outside of my job description, outside of my work hours, I'm like, I'm going to start a small group. I'm going to be a part of, like it was part of the program, I'm going to be a small group leader. And so I intentionally valued the relational discipleship because I knew that was where I could feel that was where I was heading. So, and then they'll watch as that group grows and becomes really healthy, and they'll be like, that's a really good idea. And then all of a sudden, just it transfers. Yeah. I don't even know what time it is. Are we?
You're good.
I'm good? Sweet. Cool. Anything else? I feel like this is like small group. Guys, no questions off the table. Yeah.
We talked about before how you hate games. It does sound a little bit like you figured out a way to, instead of run one game, to run like 8.
Sure.
So maybe you do like
Maybe I don't like running games.
Yeah. What did that first hour of youth group look like?
Yeah.
Because playing dodgeball with 5 people is really different than 25 people.
So we didn't have a gym. So that takes care of that. So the way it would look, it was actually really cool. So I was giving some of the tangibles for how people did some of these things. But so there were these 4 portables, like I mentioned, and I'd walk through, and there would be a group of grade 12 girls and a group of grade 12 boys and a group of, grade, 6, whatever. And we had different nights for junior high, senior high, but they would all be just sitting and chatting, and some of them wouldn't leave the front foyer of the church. Some of them would walk in, meet their youth leader, because an hour is not that long. Like, it's really not that long. And if you as the youth leader are intentionally pulling conversations and not letting the conversation die and not pretending to go to the bathroom to get out of a conversation, it's incredible how long you can stay and they feel loved. People do like to talk. I learned this when I started at the first church that I interned at. I sat down with a student, and he talked to me for a straight 45 minutes, no breath. And then got up and said, that was a really great conversation. And I went, oh, okay, I get how this works. If you can, unlock and let them talk, it's a win. It's just a win. So there are things that leaders who struggled with my no games were like, I'm going to go baking. And I'm like, I love that. Or for a season, there was 20 grade 12 boys playing rugby on the front lawn. And they just beat the tar out of each other. They thought it was great. And so those big games can happen within that space, but it's not me creating hey guys, we're going to do this night tonight. Come on out. They come out because of the relationship. And then the relationship is facilitated by games instead of they come up for the game and hope to get to relationship. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's a bit of a reverse.
Your leaders to lead interest.
Yeah.
Find activity to cover whatever conversation.
Yeah. Or just hang out with them.
Yeah.
Which genuinely 90% of my leaders just hung out with them. And again, these young people don't know how to do that. And so when you can engage that and do that, it feels cool to them. It's like, whoa, I've unlocked a new level in whatever game I'm playing right now called life. It's incredible. I can't believe that I'm hanging out with people, especially grown-ups. The middle school age, especially to grade 9, 10, they are an older person who just wants to care about me. We've undervalued that. We've undervalued the mentor-mentee relationship for kind of entertainment and rah-rah. So, yeah.
Did you ever try and limit? Because some youth groups. That's not LJ. Did you ever try and limit the whole boy-girl togetherness? I mean that in
it never happened.
It didn't happen.
Bro, this is what was now. My youth ministry. This is where the stats in Feb were funny because my youth group was always 70 to 80% dudes. I don't know why. It was fun. It was rowdy as heck. Low drama though. It was great. Lots of bloody noses, no drama. It was pretty cool. And so there wasn't I don't know. There was quite a smaller group of girls. Sometimes the girls would, I don't know. Male culture is funny. When boys are with boys, they want to mob out with the boys. I don't know, I keep saying that word, but that was just like the vibe of the youth group. So they weren't there to like find a wife or a girlfriend, and a lot of them weren't Christians, but like it became like boy time. I actually had to tell one of them, he's like, I told my girlfriend she can't come. I was like, no, she can totally come. She's allowed to come. So it's okay. So we didn't seem to have a lot of that drama. Now the girls would develop crushes, get frustrated that the boys were ignoring them, but that was a girl leader's problem, not mine. So.
So, my guys will be driving 45 minutes away. Yeah, 45 minutes away. So do you think an hour of youth is, like, it's worth it? Should it be an hour and a half? Like,
So my nights were 2 hours plus McDonald's.
okay.
So like our small groups ended up going really long. So I would like, they'd get there at 7, we'd do like 45 minutes of hanging out. We did one thing that was like game adjacent, where you ever have like, so when you don't organize games, you start to think through what resources you do have. But these two hilarious male leaders, the ones you don't know what to do with sometimes because they're like borderline, you're like, uh-oh, they're gonna get me in trouble. So I gave them a game, I gave them a thing, and so they would interview a student before each youth night. Oh, it was so funny. They just almost roast the kids that got on stage. They would just like interview them and ask funny questions, and everyone's howling laughing. But they took that on, and they became much less rowdy when I gave them something to do, which was fantastic. And so we would do that, and then we would do worship, and then we would do, speaking, and then we would do worship, and actually we'd go straight to small group. And then small groups would sometimes be like at 45 minutes long. They'd go till like, all of a sudden it's like 9:30, and it was like, shoot, we should go. And then we'd all go to McDonald's till 11. So I know it's hard to do that with 45 minutes away, but I liked to figure out how we could maximize that time together as best as possible. So just to be clear about the time length and structure. And I really like, this is like a weird personal thing, I love youth groups, like senior high youth groups on a Thursday night, because if they're Friday night, then sometimes it goes too long, but Thursday nights are sometimes a Friday night. So you can sit a little later, it's just Friday the next day, but then also on those special weekends, you can stay out later in that space. And I learned that worked really well. It was fun. Yeah.
Sunday morning, other than your weekly night. I lead worship Sunday morning, so I'm often pretty tied up. But if I set aside one Sunday a month that I could just like invest in youth ministry 100%, what would you do with that time?
I wouldn't. I'm an integration kind of guy. Like my wins are when like my like unchurched kids in church, when they all came to church. Like I think age, we talked about this a little bit, age-based ministry is super helpful for certain ages, but there's got to be an eye towards integration. Sometimes I get nervous about some of our young adult groups being youth group 2.0, and then they're like, I want youth group 3.0 because I'm in my middle years with 2 small children. So, I'm always looking towards how do we integrate them into the fuller church. You'd be surprised how many of them like show up and are like okay with it from non-church backgrounds. And I'm also a big fan of mom and dads being like letting their kids go sit with the youth group kids. I pushed that at Willow, where I like told parents like, hey, look, I know that you have this like, we're as a family, we're here, and this is a big thing for you. But if you want them to want to come, they might need to go sit over there. Just let them hang out together and feel like they're both integrated, but also, with their homies. So the back right corner of Willow, I can still see it. There's usually like 5 rows of teenagers most Sundays. It's sweet.
So, if I've got 3 kids, like currently there's nothing happening Sunday morning. I canceled the program happening Sunday morning.
Amen. No, I'm sorry, yeah.
But I just, even this past Sunday, saw one in the hallway to really try to connect, and he's just a little lost on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
There's only 3 of the youth, they're not really friends. Cool. So it's like, how can I tie them together? They're already coming to church. I don't even have to have that conversation.
Do you have a youth leader?
Unfortunately, not really.
Okay, sit with them. Just sit with them.
Yeah, okay.
So the back right corner is that's where all the youth sit at Willow, because my candidating Sunday, I sat in the back right corner, and I'm a Baptist, so I didn't move from the first place I sat for 10 years. So that's why they weren't back there because they chose that. They're back there because I was like, hey, come sit with us. Like, hey, come sit here. I mean, and if you're on stage, make them sit at the front. That'll be a challenge, but, have fun with that. But yeah, man, I would say get a youth leader, find a spot for them to sit. Because then it's like, I don't know, don't you remember being a teenager and being like, I can sit away from it's that independence, but it's not real independence. And man, it makes you feel like an adult, but you're still there. I think it's really, really powerful. Am I done, Nate?
You have another 15 minutes.
Yeah, you have 2 minutes after.
No, ask as many as you want. I gotta fill 15 more minutes.
To kind of cap the ages, like what would be considered kids ministry, what's youth ministry, and what's young adult? Like,
Let's go. No, this is a great question because everyone's debating this in different ways. And so my understanding of traditional is, kids min goes till grade 5, grade 6, 7, and 8 is your middle school ministry, and then 9 to 12 is high school ministry. But I know a lot of ministries that are shortening. I feel like post-pandemic, kids have gotten younger. And so a lot of junior highs have gone, hey, we're just going to do 7 and 8. So that's a bit of a new thing that we're finding. In Bedlam, we've been in the same program for Bedlam for forever, and like since the pandemic, we have like 12-year-old boys who are like, bro, can you turn the music down? I want you to go to sleep now. It's like 8 o'clock, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
We're literally sleeping through because it's too late.
Bro, they've gotten so soft. It's insane. They're so soft.
Developmentally, grade 6 is closer to a grade 5 than a grade 7.
Yes.
And so,
I don't know if it used to be that way. I feel like there was a season.
I don't think it was. I think there is a distinct
line.
Yeah,
COVID.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're starting fresh, I would say 7 and 8 would be grade junior high. I like having the different stages of youth ministry because I feel like with students, they can look forward to something. So like I'm in grade 7 and 8 now. I look forward to going to high school. Like I love that for them. But it would start at like once they graduate high school. This is where it gets really ambiguous because I think like I'm just out of young adulthood right now at 35. So I can never figure out where that line ends. People are like, when you have kids or when you whatever, and I'm like, I don't know. So yeah, cool. Well, I don't want to we can be done early, which is great. Huh? McDonald's? You guys want McDonald's? Yeah. I can't skip sessions anymore. I'm in charge on staff and stuff. So yeah.
So sometimes in a small church context, we were saying about age groups there.
Yeah.
The reality of numbers means that there isn't a school.
Right.
You've got, from either grade 6 or grade 7 all the way up to grade 12. There's no junior high, senior high, or middle school, high school. There's a youth group that goes.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate or account for that in a relationship-based program? Or if you're like, okay, I'm going to divide up by like grade 12 boys. Okay, there's one.
I think so, but that's the best part about this model, and what I love about it. 1-to-1 is the best ratio. Like that's the one you want. Like we're not fighting for like the 3 to 30 or 3 to 20. Like that's a harder sell. 1-to-1. Like that's what I love about this is it's like scalable each direction. So if you have one grade 12 boy, here's the best sell. Hey, 45-year-old guy who's like, I want to become involved in youth ministry. I've got a student for you to disciple. Oh, how cool is that? Like setting up that 1-to-1 is incredible. Most like famous, like thoughtful pastors I know, if you ever listen to like their story, it's like I grew up in a home, I had 1 or 2 strong mentors and a godly father. And you're like, oh, it's just not that complicated. None of them are like, I had the dopest youth ministry experience, it was amazing, and now I'm a lead pastor. None of them, right? You know what I mean? So I just think we undervalue the discipleship, the one-on-one, the personal relationship. So now, if you do have, I was going to answer your question differently for the rest of it, though. If you do have like a grade 6 to grade 12, and your senior high youth ministry is able to do this, I would start to embed senior high to junior high kind of like discipleship relationships if you can. We used to have a leadership team of high school kids. So I didn't do student leadership teams for like high school, but our high school kids who wanted to become part of my leadership team, they would actually come help out with junior high, and they became almost like junior leaders. And a lot of them either became youth leaders or now actually youth pastors through that model. And it was really, really cool to kind of give them that responsibility. And it actually, when you become a youth leader, you don't give them questions and you make them listen and have to interact with what's going on. You actually now get a chance to disciple the high school kids as they're listening to be a youth leader for the junior high kids. And then they have to like hear the question that they don't know the answer to, and then they have to start doing it, just kind of creating that space of like, oh, now I actually have to like learn this stuff and know this stuff. I mean, all the teachers teachers learn more than the students often, right? Through research and interaction. Yeah.
Did you have any strategies to work at integrating students into the church, especially some that are unchurched, I guess? Because it's easier sometimes for the church kids who kind of grew up through it.
Yeah.
The grade 9, grade 10 kids get saved. It becomes like a kind of club towards them, the youth ministry. How do you get them further connected to the rest of the body?
And the rest of the body? So we at Willow had a day camp. I think day camps are awesome if you have a camp scenario, because camps are a pretty easy onboarding situation where like you're really facilitating a really high need, but then you can also like start to become more of the body. Sunday morning, that's a good question. I don't think I'd have anything directed towards a Sunday morning, but it would all depend on kind of where their gifts are and what they could do as well. So, but I like camps. Camps are like, if your church doesn't run a day camp, don't run a day camp for the students, run it for the leadership. Run it for your high school kids. Even if 20 kids show up to the camp, you have an opportunity to disciple youth for the whole summer, and or for a few weeks of the summer, and either they're paid or they're volunteering, getting their hours. And if not, send your kids to NBC with Dan, and he will train them up and send them back to you. And he loves the local church, so there's a plug, NBC plug. Yeah, Josh.
So when you talk about making the swap from like a game-based or a program-based youth ministry to a relational-based youth ministry, how do you communicate that out and instill that vision into leaders who are very, very tied to a games-based ministry? Because I've been trying to do that over the past couple of years, but we just have a few leaders who just like will not let go of like, what game are we doing this week? What this are we doing this week? Type thing.
It's so hard. I'm going to answer your question super indirectly. We have a lot of flagship churches that were flagship churches 20, 30 years ago. And I ask a lot of questions with the old boys when I hang out with them. And what I've learned is there was a model, again, it's why I did the philosophy thing at the beginning, there's a model that people grow attached to because they see it have fruit. And one of the mistakes I made was not acknowledging that there was a day and time where like having a dope program was actually super beneficial for youth ministry, and I've tried to learn how to be more generous towards that. But essentially what happens is a church dies or a youth group dies when it starts eating the wineskin and not the wine. And so however you can try to get people to understand without disparaging the past, that what was made in the past was temporary, it's old wineskin, and that's okay. It was beautiful and it worked and it was awesome, and you can be encouraging about that, but hey, can we try something new? And I think the try something new is big. I've learned in my 10 years at Willow to never leave beta testing until you have to. So I've definitely carried that into the Feb youth world. We're like, hey, we're just beta testing this. And when you're just beta testing something, it can suck, and it can not work, and it can not go well. But it allows people who are skeptical to walk into it and go, I don't know if I like this, but if it is truly what's going to be the new wineskin that holds the wine well, then they'll be like, wow, this is actually so much easier and so much better and so much more what I want. And so beta test. Hey, we're going to try a night where we're not going to do games. Your whole job is to engage this demographic of kids. You catch all their friends. This is what you're going to do. Let's just try it. Try it with me. And they go, oh, okay, let's just try it one night. And then when they go, that was awesome. That was so cool. Or if like half of them say it was awesome and half of them don't, be like, okay, hey, let's like maybe debrief together so that it's not you versus them and you trying to impose a new model, but your group, half of them that catch it are like, I'm in. The other half are like, I don't get it, but maybe I will. And so beta testing is my favorite. 3 minutes? Sweet. So, I mean, I do everything I do in Feb Youth. This House of Praise tour, it's a beta test. I don't know if it's going to work. And it's pretty cool, but I don't know if it's going to work. And we're not going to say this is the thing we're doing every year until we know that this is what God has called us to do. So we're just going to test it. And last year it was called the Reunion. And we did it last year and it was fine, but it wasn't it. And so it was just a beta test. It didn't work. So, don't leave beta testing until you have to.
So you talked about like transitioning young adults like right into basically being leaders for youth group. And I mean, I'm just hearing about this and just toss it out, but
that's cool.
Like, would that be like to the lack of young adults ministry, or you just think you're strapped, like as far as resources? Because you were talking about, you know, the effect of COVID, like people's development process kind of feeling like like a little bit behind, but also even just like considering generally like where young adults are compared to how they used to be historically.
Right.
Like, times of getting married, when they're finally landing those jobs,
Totally.
they make incomes and stuff. It's almost like they're operating at a high school student level
Yeah.
in certain ways as young adults.
Mhm.
And so, like as far as the need for the young adult ministry, like in its position, in juxtaposition to a youth ministry, as far as how it functions, like I don't know about that. I don't know.
Oh, that's cool. So I am traditionally, full confession, I'm a deep end pusher. That's what I do. I'm like, all right, let's go. You're in the deep end. And so I agree with you that the culture has said that young adults don't need to grow up. And I think that a provocative way to make them grow up is turn them into disciplers. Especially if you've done a good job discipling them in youth ministry, then it's like, okay, now you turn around and do the same. Like that's what Jesus said, right? And so I think it's a slow build as well when they're like, you know, hey, you're a 19-year-old dude. I'm going to make you like a grade 6 boys leader. And like those grade 6 boys just need somebody a little more mature than them, and you fit the bill, you know? So, you know, and so, I mean, and whenever I'd onboard somebody new eventually when I could, like optimally, I'd have like a seasoned leader and then like a junior leader come under them, but that was when I had 25 youth leaders. So that was a different stage in my ministry. But no, I think we need to push our young adults to do so much more. Gosh, because that age, once you have kids, you actually don't have time. Like you get married, you have kids, you don't have time, you have a ministry, you have a life. There's this beautiful space where you have energy and time. Gosh, if we could use that for the kingdom of God and not for our own experimentation, that would be amazing. Yes and amen? All right, I will pray and close unless I make... Dan, can you pray and close, buddy? Sure. Cool, thanks.
Heavenly Father, we thank you again for this opportunity to just be encouraged to do what you've called us to do, to be disciples and make disciples, and to walk with these youth and point them to you. So Lord, help us do that. Help us to trust you, seek you, and know you. And again, we just thank you for this time together that we can learn together, learn from one another's experiences, to do what you called us to do, to be faithful to point these young people to the amazing love, mercy, and grace of your Son. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.